Hello, beauties. Welcome to Moms Unboxed, a podcast where I unbox with you the how-tos, tips, and tricks to empower women to upgrade relationships, intimacy, and parenting. I'm your host, Melanie Carolyn, a multi-dimensional woman, life coach, lover, and mom who's made a lot of fucking mistakes. If you want to live a sensual and liberated life, you've come to the right space. Don't forget to follow Moms Unboxed because you don't want to miss an episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Moms Unboxed. I hope y'all are having a good week. And if it's not, I trust that it will turn around for you because I have an amazing guest with me today, Miss Ashley Joe, author, speaker, mom, griever, healer, transformative woman who has done a great deal of healing in her life. And she speaks to empower others to heal as well. Welcome and thank you for being here, Ashley. Say hello to our guests.
Thank you so much for having me, Melanie. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! Now, I am so excited that you and I energetically met each other and then we visually met each other because you have such a radiant light. Like when I look at you, your face just lights up. You have such a beautiful smile. Your energy just glows through your eyes. And it's a true testimony of the healing work that you have done in your life through grieving, alcoholism, and becoming a woman and a mom who is sober and who has transformed through that and who's also been in really shitty relationships and is now in a really loving, beautiful relationship and you're about to go to Mexico. Like you have so many amazing things happening in your life. I am so grateful you're here and I would love for you to just share your with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying those kind things. That's so incredible to hear that healing radiates from me because some days it doesn't feel like it, right? Like some days we wake up and we're like, wait, have I healed? The truth is we're all still on a healing journey no matter what. Every day is healing. So I am going to give you guys kind of 30,000 foot overview of my story and then dive into a little bit about what brought me here to the Moms Unboxed show. Because for me, a huge portion of my healing journey has to do with being a mom. And so that journey started when I was 23 years old and I gave birth to my second child, Cornelius John. When he was just 5 months old, he was diagnosed with a genetic disease called spinal muscular atrophy. And he was given a prognosis that was not good. It was 50% of kids who are diagnosed with SMA at his age end up reaching the age of 2. And so here I am, a child myself at the age of 23, grappling with this diagnosis and what this means for me and what this means for my husband at the time and my daughter at the time they were 17 months apart. So I had 2 kids under 2, a newly diagnosed kid with a terminal illness. And I just focused so much during that phase of my life on keeping everybody else in my family okay and really directed very little energy to myself because I felt like if my family wasn't okay, I wasn't okay. And if my family was okay, I would be okay. Not to mention at this time, my husband at the time was only 10 months sober when my son received his diagnosis. So just the stress and the weight on my shoulders was insane. Fast forward to Cornelius turning 10 months old, and he passed away at 10 months and 10 days. In my arms, I say I had the pleasure to sing him literally to the gates of heaven. And it was the most beautiful moment and like simultaneously the most heartbreaking thing that I've ever gone through in my life. And again, I'm only 23 and I'm having to say goodbye to a child, right? And after that happened, my husband and I just felt this pressure to like make sure everybody knew we were okay and we weren't going to let this break us. Even though he was newly sober and we lost a kid, we were going to survive, right? And what that did is created an outward mask that told everyone, we're okay, we're fine, everything's cool, don't worry about us, we're doing great. But inside, both internally as individuals and as a couple, we were fractured and we were starting to fall apart. Because how do you not when you lose a child, right?
Now that's
And
devastating.
it is. So fast forward a little bit, and eventually that led to our relationship just falling apart completely. I'm not proud of it, but I had an affair as a way to exit the relationship. And that created a whole downward spiral of impact and effects that came kind of back towards me. And then all of a sudden, I find myself a single mom. And we have these dreams and desires as we're growing up as kids. And I don't think anybody has a dream and desire to like grow up, get married, get divorced, lose a child, become a single mom. Like that was nowhere in my playbook of what my life was going to look like. And here I found myself single mom, divorced, and it was a messy, messy, messy divorce. And the relationship you alluded to was not great at the end at all. And now I'm like fighting this single motherhood identity. And I went into a downward spiral of depression and anxiety. But again, I was the queen of the mask. So from the outside, people thought I was okay. But inside, I'm slowly crumbling, falling apart, and every day hating myself for the affair, for the fact that I let my life become this, right? Because it placed all the blame on myself. And that eventually led to really bad alcoholism, where first I drank to medicate my depression, medicate my anxiety, and it worked, right? As it does, and it's socially acceptable. And then one day, I realized it wasn't working anymore. I wasn't getting that relief that I originally sought after. And then not only that, all of a sudden I realized I needed it. I was like shaking if I wouldn't drink. I didn't know, is it the anxiety or am I really this bad of an alcoholic? Right. And so that was so hard because here I am, a mom who I know inside I have a drinking problem. And I'm also a strong-willed woman. You know this. You just had a couple of conversations with me. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to beat this on my own. I can stop. Like, it's just a willpower thing, right? But no matter what I did, I couldn't stop drinking. And so a big barrier to me getting help was the fact that I had my kids at home with me. And I knew if I went away to a traditional treatment center, that would mean I'm leaving my kids. And that would bring up all sorts of custody things and all sorts of problems. And I wasn't ready or willing to do that. But thank God I found an online treatment program and I enrolled in that treatment program in August of 2020. And I got sober and have been sober ever since. So I am now over 5.5 years sober and super excited to be here with you.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much. And that was super high level overview. So I'm an open book. Whatever you have questions about, we can dig into.
Yeah. Wow. That even just at a young age, how much you had to go through and like grow the fuck up, right? Like
Hmm.
you weren't out partying and drinking. You were holding your son who is passing away. Oh, when you told me that, I started tearing up. I was like, oh, cry. That's, uh, my
Yeah,
heart goes
I
out
didn't
to
have a
you.
choice to grow up. I had, like, if I didn't grow up, I had a 17-month-old, an infant, and a husband who was newly sober. Who was gonna hold it together, right?
Right.
And that was so much pressure that I kind of put on my own shoulders, but also is just the hand that life gave me.
Hmm. Yeah. And now you get to tell your story to empower other women who might be experiencing similar difficulties to heal, transform, and evolve. I remember when I had a son, I had just turned 21 and I was in a very abusive relationship. And I can relate to what you're saying about like, we wear this mask. And I think it's even more so with women who are quieter and we struggle to advocate for ourselves because our voice has been so repressed that this mask is just 24/7. Even
Mhm.
towards ourselves, we don't want to admit to ourselves how our mental health has been affected.
Mhm.
Or, like you said, when you turn to alcohol to cope, you didn't realize how bad your alcoholism had gotten and tried to quit. And you had the shakes, and you're like, I can't even function without it
Mhm.
anymore. And that's part of the mask and the unawareness that we have even towards ourselves, especially when we're in survival mode and we are caring for children or we're caring for our partner. Ourselves, the woman within, gets so repressed that we don't even recognize it.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to that so much. Like my family, my own family, I have 3 sisters and 2 parents, obviously. They were shocked when I got divorced. And they were shocked when I got divorced because they had no idea what was going on in my relationship. Because first of all, it's a little embarrassing to admit it, right? When you find yourself in a relationship that's just falling apart and that's terrible and that's emotionally abusive and verbally abusive and all the things, like to admit that to yourself in my mind was one of the hardest things. I kept just giving my husband the benefit of the doubt, like, but he's sober, so have grace, and but he's not drinking, so it's okay. And no, it wasn't okay. It's never okay to scream at a human being. It's never okay to put them up against the wall and put your arm up against their throat. Like those things just aren't okay, but they're also embarrassing to admit in our out loud voice, right? Like, how did I allow myself to get to this place? And so, even my own family, the people who are supposed to be closest to me, had no idea because I kept everybody locked out.
Mhm.
Everybody. Because admitting it to anybody meant having to admit it to myself first, and I wasn't ready to do that.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest parts is admitting it to yourself because with that comes so much shame, so much guilt, and recognizing and admitting and feeling those deeper emotions is extremely hard. Even myself, just last week, I'm crying in the shower and I'm trying to understand why am I controlling the cleanliness of the house, right? We find things to control when we're
Mhm.
internally not feeling in control, right?
Yeah.
And what came forward for me through my grieving, through my ability to recognize and be aware and face those unwholesome or uncomfortable emotions was that I feel like a failure,
Mhm.
just like you had experienced with the death of your son, the
Mhm.
divorce, and you being a single mom, is that feeling like a failure is probably one of the worst feelings that women can experience because there's this perception that women are supposed to hold it all together. They're the leaders of the family. They're, the caretakers, the nurturers. But when we stop nurturing ourselves and or our life kind of crumbles or we're stepping into this unknown journey because life didn't go exactly how we thought it was going to go, we feel like a fucking failure. And that's
Mm.
exactly what I was experiencing, just like you're experiencing. And I know women around the world have experienced that. So tell me, how did you go from like feeling like a failure to where you got now? How did you move through that and heal that part of you? And do you still sometimes feel like a failure? I just threw out a ton of
Yeah.
questions at
No, it's all good. I will hit them all, I promise. So, for me to get to the point where I was ready and willing to accept that, it got really dark, if I'm being completely honest, Melanie. Like, I got to a point where in the midst of my addiction, I attempted suicide 2 different times. And there was something about the second time where I started my car in my garage with the garage door down, and I had 2 6-packs of Bud Light Platinum next to me, and I had pounded one of them, and I was gonna drink the other one just till I pass out, and that was gonna be it, right? Which people who haven't experienced addiction with depression hand in hand don't understand that, but for me, like the best possible ending would just be to just not wake up again. Right. And that sounds so bad because I was so lost in that shame and self hatred and self spiral that I didn't know what to do. But my garage did not end up sealing completely. And so there was enough oxygen coming in and carbon monoxide going out. And so I woke up and I was still alive. And I wish I could say, like that, everything changed and life was better. And it wasn't. But there was something about hitting that low of a low where I realized if I am gone, my kids don't have a mother for the rest of their life. And they deserve to have a mom. And there's a reason that you tried twice and failed. And I believe in God. I know not everybody does. And I just said, God has you here for a reason, right? And I didn't know what that reason was. I didn't get sober right away in that moment, but I knew that something needed to change. And so I started looking for changes that felt feasible to me. And it took a few months. I went to online AA meetings at first. I got 90 days of sobriety and then I'd relapse again, right? And then finally in August of 2020, I just reached a point where I had to make a commitment to myself to come out of my shell, look in the mirror, say, this is who you are, Ashley, but your past does not have to define your future. You can make a different choice. You can go in a different direction and you can learn to forgive yourself and live again. And on August 14, I made the first step in doing that. And I didn't do that for my kids. I did it for myself. And if I hadn't, my kids wouldn't have me here anymore. And then are there ever days where I still feel like a complete and total failure? Yes, often, right? Like I struggle with it still probably daily. I am a overachiever perfectionist. And so if one thing goes wrong, it's like, oh, it just reminds me of all my shame and all my trauma. But I have worked hard and have the tools in my tool belt now. I went to an full year-long intensive outpatient treatment program online. And through that year, I had to do things like write my life story and read it to strangers. I had to write 2 different eulogies for myself and read them aloud to people. The first as though I had died because of substance abuse, and the second as though I lived a very long life and I just died in my sleep one night, right? And through that, I started facing the demons of shame, the demons of doubt, the demons of fear, the demons of worry, and all of that self-hatred kind of began to like eventually melt away. And one day I looked in the mirror and I was like, I don't hate myself anymore. I actually am having fun. I'm enjoying time with my kids. I think this is what living life is supposed to feel like. And it was the most beautiful thing. But that does not mean that those demons don't creep their way back in, and that shame and that doubt and that worry and that fear don't start to come back in. But every day I fight against it because I know that someone just said this week to me, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. I have a pulse and I have a purpose, and I know that I'm here for a reason. And if it's to reach someone who's listening to this show right now, who feels like a mom, who's put their kids and put their husband, put their family in front of themselves every single day, and they just need to know it's okay to pause. It's okay to breathe. It's okay. In fact, it's necessary to put yourself in front of those people, because if you don't, they're not going to be okay and they're not going to respect you. So anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here.
No, it's never a tangent on this show. I am so inspired. And, I haven't gone through the exact same experiences, but with my toxic relationship, I was polyamory. A lot of people know that listening to the show. And I was so toxic within myself that I attracted a toxic person who was a functioning alcoholic and was abusive. And it took me 3.5 years to leave that person. And it contributed to the crumble of my marriage. I was disassociating within myself. I was distant from my children. I was not loving to myself or anyone around me. And there was this point in time where I was like shaking at the end of the road, like holding the steering wheel. I had just gotten back from seeing my kids and was going back to the boyfriend's house because he was like threatening me if I didn't go back. And I was at this stop sign and I literally froze and I saw myself drowning.
Mhm.
And at that point, I was literally dying. I was 100 pounds
Mhm.
and my body was responding with rashes and I couldn't eat. I knew if I continued this, there was going to be no more me,
Mhm.
and I didn't feel like I had a purpose and I just felt so defeated. And I saw myself drowning and I knew no one was going to be there to lift me up unless it was me,
Mhm.
right? And you had to this coming to Ashley moment, right? Within yourself, I have to fucking make a change.
Mhm.
And no one's going to do that unless I do it and unless I want to do it. And it's okay for me to put myself first in order to make that happen so that I can be a better mother, so that I
Mhm.
can be a better partner, so that I could be a better human being towards myself and others. And this is what it's going to take. And that's a really fucking hard thing to confront.
Mhm.
Like, the decisions that I've made have got me to this lowest fucking point in my life. I can either choose to continue down this path or I continue to heal, grow, and evolve into the woman that I need to be so that I can have the life that I fucking desire and that my
Mhm.
kids deserve. And so I can relate to those feelings and that, like, coming to, like, God moment, like people like to say,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I started meditating. And I took these meditation based stress relief classes in order to build a relationship with myself. Because although I wasn't addicted to alcohol, I was addicted to that relationship.
Relationship addictions are harder than other addictions. Like, I've been in an addicted relationship where, like, I needed the dopamine hit of the crazy cycle that you're on, and I've been addicted to work, and I've been addicted to alcohol, I firmly believe that relationships are the hardest addiction to break free from.
Yeah, it took me, like I said, 3.5 years of me trying to feel empowered to leave this person, to him threatening to end his life if I didn't come back or if I
Mhm.
left. I just felt fucking chained to this person. And what I realized later, and perhaps you've had this experience, I was trying to emplace my value and my worth if I changed this person. If they
Mhm.
changed for me, then I was of value as a human. And then I was worthy of love. And what I realized later was like, I'm fucking worthy and of value because I say I am.
Yep.
And I love myself because I love myself. And I don't need that validation from anybody, any man, especially a
Mhm.
toxic one.
Mhm. I think we watch movies all the time, right? And we're, like, drawn to the hero in the movie, and so whether we think about it or not, we would love to be a hero. We would love to be like, "Someone changed because of me, because I'm just so awesome," but they have to want the change themselves, and that is the hardest part. You could be the best guide in the world, and the choice that they make has nothing to do with our value. But when you're stuck in that relationship, it's easy to tie your own value to what's happening in that relationship. And I totally relate. I mean, when I say I had an affair to get out of my marriage, some people don't understand what that means. So I had actually told my husband, like, I'm going to file for divorce. We have to be done. This isn't working. It's not good for us. It's not good for the kids. And he threatened me. He said, fine, go ahead and file for divorce. I will leave. Our children will never know their father. I will go to Germany. You won't be able to find me. You won't get a dime from me, and our kids won't have a dad. Go ahead and do whatever you want to do, but I will ruin your life. Right. And so at that moment, and people who haven't been in this relationship don't understand, I said, okay, that's fine. I won't file for divorce. We'll stay married, but this is done. Like, you and I are done. Like, from this moment, we're just cohabitating with each other. And so whether I realized it or not, months later, when I connected with someone from my past life, it was like I had what's called an exit affair, a way to get him to hate me enough that he would leave me because he wouldn't allow me to leave him. And even when I say that, like, wouldn't allow me, people don't understand that. But if you've been in a toxic relationship, you understand it is literally like you are tethered to them, drowning in the ocean, and you're both tied to like bricks and you're just going under and you can't get away from each other and you can't get away from the bricks.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And isn't it interesting how subconsciously we'll do things out of survival mode to get
Mhm.
away from the toxic person
Yeah.
or even the addiction at times, right? Where
Mhm.
you're like, how the fuck is this going to work for me to leave this person? Oh, let me cheat on them so they'll hate me enough so they'll leave me. But when we're in survival mode, sometimes we'll do drastic things in order to get us out of a situation.
Mhm. And cheating on him went against, like, every moral value and belief that I had because we did not have an open relationship, right? It wasn't until I was in therapy later where my therapist said, "You had an exit affair." And I'm like, "I've never heard of this. What is this?" He's like, "It's when you have an affair to get the other person to leave you." And I was like, Y you're right, I don't think I consciously chose that, but that's what I did, right? And we will do the craziest things that don't make sense to anybody from the outside, that conflict with who we are even on the inside, really because we're in such a toxic state and have so much fear and worry and anxiety about every little decision that we make.
Yeah. But those decisions create a pathway of healing and self discovery and
Mhm,
peace. People might think it was shitty, right? But what's even shittier is staying in a toxic relationship where you're being abused.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that was a gateway out, even though it went against your values and your morals. Choose which evil to be somewhere where you're being abused or to cheat and find freedom outside of that. That was a really brave thing to do. Even subconsciously, you were doing that, but it was so brave and courageous. And it was your inner self knew, like, this is the way out.
Yeah. It did, and it's interesting because I spent a good part of that last year, like, writing my entire adult story, and I wrote a book, and it turned into a thing, but when I published it, I was so worried about this part of my story that we're talking about here, like, "Oh my goodness, people are gonna judge me, and they're gonna think I'm a horrible person," and all of this, and the beauty of, writing through it and healing through it, kinda reliving it was incredible. But then also the grace that it was met with by my friends who read it and people who I haven't really communicated with much since I was married. Because when you get a divorce, things fracture, and friendships are some of them. But one person in particular said to me, I was like, how was like reading the whole part about like the marriage falling apart? And she was like, oh my goodness, Ashley, there's not a soul who would read your story and like fault you for anything that you did. Most of us would be in a much worse situation. So here I am, still all these years later, after all this healing, worried about what other people are going to perceive of the situation. And you just said it, like, the decision I made was brave. And then to go on and tell that story is brave. And yet that still small voice in my head says, like, maybe don't do it. People are going to judge. People are going to think you're horrible. Maybe you are horrible. I think you are horrible. Right. And then it's fighting that demon away again and being like, no, not today. Today, you don't get to tell me that. Today, I stand firm in the truth that I did what I needed to do to take care of myself and to take care of my children, to get myself to a point where I could heal. Because here's the thing, Melanie, as long as we're in a relationship like that, we can't heal. We can't. It is not possible. You could go to all of the therapy in the world, but if you are in a toxic relationship where both parties aren't working on healing, it doesn't matter what you do.
I would agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. I was never going to heal if I was going to stay in that relationship. And unfortunately, by the time I got out of that relationship, there had been so much damage to my marriage that it was not salvageable. But
Mhm.
what was the healing that I did within myself so I could be a better person for my kids and my future partner. like my partner currently. Healing is an evolution through a lifetime. We are continuously healing. And that part of you that is worried about the judgment, that's a limiting belief that stems from the mask that you used to wear, right? Because we
Mhm,
wear masks to people please, to
mhm.
ensure that people aren't seeing the true self. So we're not judged. It's a protection, right? As well.
Yep.
But when we remove the mask, there's still that limiting belief that's going to pop up. People are going to hate me. People are going to judge me. People aren't going to like the fact that I did what I did in order to get out of a really shitty situation. And you're doing just that. You recognize this as limiting belief, and you're like, okay, I see you, I acknowledge you, I understand you're there, I understand where you're coming from, and no, like,
Yeah.
no, people want to hear the vulnerability of real life situations because there's many of us out there, right, who have made poor choices in our life or who have made choices in order to get out of a shitty situation.
Mhm.
They're just not able to express it, and that's what makes you so fucking unique and amazing, is that you're able to do that. You're like, "No, I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna be transparent so that I can empower other moms and women to share their story or empower them to heal, to get out of that toxic relationship or to get treatment." While I'm being a mom, like, holy fuck, that was a lot for you, I'm sure.
Yes, it was.
But we can't put a pause on healing if we
Mhm,
wanna change our situation, and that
mhm.
sometimes means making the hard choices to get out of a situation or to find help and support so that we can be that version of us that we know we can be.
I love that you used the analogy earlier in the discussion about drowning, because that's kind of where like the whole title of my book, Tides of Grief, Waves of Grace, comes from. Is like there are moments in my life after my son died where I felt like I was drowning or at least lost at sea and could not see land in any direction. And there's an insane storm, and I don't know how I'm going to survive. Right. And then there are moments of joy and peace and healing, and that's like being in the ocean and being on a surfboard and riding a wave all the way in, right? Both of those experiences come from the same ocean. It's just how we experience the waves that's different. And I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, there are moments in our life where we have felt like we are drowning or like we are caught in the undertow and we cannot get out. But I promise you, there are waves in that same ocean that you can grab a surfboard and you can ride them. And sometimes it's just waiting out this season. Sometimes it's raising your hand and asking for help. Sometimes it's listening to a show like this and hearing that there are other badass women who are willing to sit and talk about these things just so we don't feel alone. But both experiences exist in our lives. Heartbreak, joy, hope, healing, love, hate, they all go together and we don't get one without the other.
That's right. I always tell my clients that life is a duality and we are going to experience the happiness and the sadness, the shame and the joy
Mhm,
and the love and the heartbreak. And it's being able to hold both with
mm,
tenderness and compassion. And like you said, ride the wave. And
mhm,
we get to choose how we want to live the experience that we are going through. We can look at it with a half glass full or a half glass empty,
mhm,
and we can look at ourselves as tenacious and brave and courageous. You've got you, right? You are the one that can move through anything that you want to move through and call in for yourself. It's
mhm.
just holding that duality and elevating your self leadership in order to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's beautifully put.
Thanks. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story with the Moms Unboxed audience. Tides of Grief and Waves of Grace by Ashley Joe. Tell us where we can find your book and you. Where can we find
Yes.
you?
Yes. So my website is thisisashleyjo.com. ASHLEYJO is Ashley Joe. My Instagram is This Is Ashley Joe. And my book, Tides of Grief, Waves of Grace, is found on my website or on Amazon. And it is a memoir of scandal. So yes, there's some crazy stuff in there. Sobriety, heartbreak, and healing. It's really designed for anybody who feels like we've been talking about, like they're maybe drowning in life right now and they don't see a way out. The goal is to provide hope.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, those links will be in the podcast description. And if you know a mama or a woman who is also going through their own tides of grief and they're looking for inspiration and empowerment, send them this episode. We would much appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ashley, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And like always, mamas, don't forget to live a liberated, sensual, and unboxed life. Until the next time. Thank you again for listening to Moms Unboxed. Please don't forget to share this episode with all your mommy friends and follow me on Instagram at Moms Unboxed Podcast. Tune in next Thursday for another juicy episode. Until the next time, sunshine.